You're listening to The Alex Pierson Show.
You are indeed, and it is great to have you here with us. And certainly, insurance, we've got to have it, right? That's what they tell us. And yes, we do like to have it because you never know when you're going to get into an accident. But next time you do, in fact, get some insurance, you're going to want to ask a few questions. I didn't even actually know about this because when you get your insurance, I think most of us do assume that the coverage we get is actual coverage. But if you require extra costs for things like you get a serious injury, maybe you need some rehabilitation work, maybe you're not able to get back to your job. I think what a lot of us don't seem to understand is that because there's a statutory deductible and the amount we pay is so high, most of us suffering injuries don't even come close to getting the deductible amount. And so what are we leaving on the table that we shouldn't? And what is it that has changed that we're not catching on to? What's the secret? Let's ask Nanesh Kotak, the lawyer with Kotak Law. It is great to have you.
Thank you. Good to be on the show.
All right, let's talk a little bit about how this works, because I think on first blush, most people would say, well, insurance is insurance. But what are we talking about, specifically when you talk about statutory deductibles? Is that the set amount when we get an accident, like $200, $250? Can you just explain that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So we have in Ontario what's called a two-tier system of compensation. The first is sort of the no-fault benefits, where you get some minimal income replacement benefits up to $400 a week. You get some rehabilitation, usually a max of $3,500, maybe funeral expenses and things like that. Then you also have a fault portion where you can sue for things like future income loss, future care, and pain and suffering. So this secret deductible applies for pain and suffering awards, any pain and suffering award less than $156,000, which obviously 99.9% of cases are. So what happens is this: whatever a court will award you for your pain, first of all, let me just say this: to get any money for pain and suffering, you have to have the most significant of injuries, a permanent and serious impairment of an important bodily, mental, or psychological function. This means that it's obviously serious to begin with, and it's lasting forever. Once you've passed that threshold, now you got to deal with the deductible. So let's say, for example, you have a fracture in your arm, and you have a physical job. You can't use that arm. You can't do that work. And a jury says, hey, we're going to give you some income loss, but we're going to pay you $40,000 for your pain and suffering that you've been through. You end up with zero, because the insurance companies keep just shy of $47,000 as a deductible for pain and suffering. And the kicker is this, Alex: this deductible goes up every year due to inflation. This increase due to inflation was brought in by the Wynne government. I believe it was around 2016, 17, when the deductible was $30,000. Now we're hitting just shy of $47,000. So obviously you can see you pay for a policy where you think you're going to be compensated through no fault and through the at fault if it's somebody else's fault, but you don't get real compensation. Now, Alex, why do I call it secret? Well, two reasons. One is that I suspect most listeners don't know about it. People who read about it don't know there's this deductible. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, juries at a trial cannot be told that, hey, whatever you award is going to be reduced by that deductible. They cannot be. If they're told about it, then the jury is struck. There's a mistrial, and there's legal costs awarded against the parties suing. So it is very secret, and it's designed to keep the money in auto insurance companies' pockets.
Okay, let me ask you a bunch of questions so that,
Sure.
Make sure that we all understand this, right? So in this province, in Ontario, maybe there are other provinces doing it. When you're talking about any kind of pain and suffering, if that doesn't come out to more than $46,000, then you're not getting anything. So in other words, wouldn't this then push people into making fraudulent claims, like you're going to bulk up your injuries so that you get some coverage?
Well, listen, we're talking about auto insurance claims for pain and suffering. And, how do you make a bogus claim that would increase?
Well, you can say you got a really sore neck, right? Like I'm sure you could. You could just, go to a doctor and walk with a limp, right? Like there's lots of people who try to defraud insurance.
I can imagine so, Alex, but I think this is more of an insurance company sort of narrative that they like out there. Injuries need to be objective. To meet this verbal threshold of serious and permanent impairment, there needs to be opinions from specialists. There needs to be x-rays. There need to be scans, right? So it's not like, okay, I've got a bit of back pain. You're not going to meet that threshold, first of all, to get any money, and then you're going to have it wiped out by the deductible. What we're talking about are legitimate claims here where there are, damages to the discs, damages to the brain, et cetera, that are affected by this deductible to a point where the recovery is nil or minimal.
All right. So then what do people, what should we know and what should we be asking or even raising to the insurance company to make sure that we are covered?
Yeah. So the provincial government is coming in with legislation that's next year called an opt-in approach. And this is to our no-fault benefits. It's very important that people sort of understand this. What they're doing is they're taking away the automatic part of your policy that would have funeral benefits, that would have income replacement benefits, death benefits. And they're saying if you want it now, you need to pay extra for it. The problem is people are having difficulty meeting ends meet, right? So more likely than not, they may say, well, I don't want that part of my policy. Well, guess what? You're hurt in an accident. And if you don't have coverage for income replacement through work, then you're not getting any monetary compensation right away for your income loss, right? And then maybe you go on EI and you go on welfare, unfortunately, and that goes back to the taxpayer, right? So one thing I would suggest when your policy comes up for renewal next year, certainly say, hey, I want to have income replacement benefits if you're going to need it, right? I want to have, if a loved one passes, I want the funeral paid for. Right, these are benefits that we all had in our policy, and now they're being taken out in 26 unless we pay. So those are things you need to ask your broker. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, be aware that there is this deductible to pain and suffering so that, maybe if you ever serve on a jury, that whatever you say this person should get for their pain and suffering, they're not really going to get it. So you have awareness of that and maybe act accordingly.
Yeah, and unless I missed it, and maybe I did, but the bottom line is when you're buying insurance, they'll often push or suggest a plan that might cover you or what they think you'd need. But ultimately, what are the questions then that you would want someone to ask to make sure that they're covered, top to toe? Because not everything is equal, and I think a lot of people think, oh well, let's say my house gets. We're talking about auto insurance, bottom line is your car gets broken into or any kind of stuff like that. Just to make sure that they have exactly the kind of insurance. What is that? Yeah. What is that conversation like?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it boils down to those opt-in benefits. Which ones should you take, right? Yeah. And I would suggest the income ones and those that would give you more money for rehabilitation if you're injured. Because we pay for, I think, $65,000, but the reality is most of us only get $3,500 unless there's some sort of a fracture. So I think it's having that conversation. The other thing is this: when we have auto insurance, our children are covered under that auto insurance. So if we decide to buy the cheapest policy, we're not going to opt in for certain benefits. But our kids are under our policy. They get hurt in an accident. We've made the decision to buy the cheaper one than to not opt in to benefits such as income replacement for them. Maybe they've just started working, but they're still under our policies. Guess what? They don't get paid because of the decisions we made. So that's a sort of a one issue that we need to sort of think about when it comes to the no-fault benefits. They're called statutory accident benefits. And the other aspect is simply be aware that our system, in my opinion, is broken. It's broken. It's absolutely one-sided. We're paying high premiums. Insurance companies get this massive deductible they get to keep, even though you've proved your injury is serious and permanent. Jeez. It's time maybe for an overhaul of the system.
Oh, you think, yeah. Any idea what just before I let you go, any idea of the amount that insurance companies have taken in of unsuspecting clients?
Yes. Well, I tell you, look, 2024, the stats were showing that nationwide, auto policies went up, the premiums went up by over 12%, and Ontario probably was much higher. Historically, we've had, even during the pandemic, I think we had a 20% increase at that time given to insurance companies, despite obviously the less payout of benefits because people weren't on the road. So listen, they're beholden to shareholders and they have to make a profit. They have to make a profit, or why would they exist? But there needs to be some sort of equilibrium here, that don't use the premiums you get in auto insurance just because you're losing money with wildfires. There has to be a better accounting of what's happening.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, why get insurance? All right. Look, I'm out of time, but certainly a lot of questions on that one. Appreciate yours.
Thank you so much.